So I've been asked quite a few times to do a bio video on how I got involved with bodybuilding and my weight loss journey, and that's something that I've held back on from doing up until this point. Most people who mention my story are either only aware of the weight loss part of my story, or that's what they tend to put the most focus on. And so when I'm asked how I got to where I'm at now, it's really not a simple answer. And my story is tied to so many different things that when they're untangled, the story doesn't really make sense anymore. So as I tell it, it may sound like that things are unrelated, but bear with me because it all comes together in the end. I have written quite a few notes to make sure that I don't forget things or forget the order of things. So if I look over or you see me just drifting my eye gaze, that's what I'm looking at is just the notes that I have down. 2012 is when all of it started for me. At that time, I was 236 pounds. I was suffering from really severe depression and was cutting myself pretty regularly and had been for a good portion of my life. I did that for a total of 16 years before stopping. I also had been struggling with severe PTSD from a rape that happened in 2011. I had no respect for my body, didn't feel like my body was even mine. Um, when I was raped, it felt like that the person who did it had said, I own your body now. I own your mind. I own your dreams. So making any choices to take care of my body was definitely a challenge. But then in November of 2012, I met Rick Abril, who ran a gym at a behavioral health agency. He was a bodybuilder and he had some experience with martial arts. And at the time, I was taking a martial arts class, but was really struggling with endurance because I was, 236 pounds. And so it appealed to me that Rick had some experience with that, and maybe I could not be struggling so much in my class. At the time, Rick was prepping for the 2013 Copper Classic bodybuilding competition, and I thought his prep was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. I would watch him count out almonds every day. He had this exact amount of almonds he would have with his meal. He was eating out of Tupperware containers. I'd seen him do some crazy exercises that I've never seen anyone do, even the times that I've gone to a gym, but I was new to weightlifting, so all of that was new to me watching that. And I remember thinking to myself when he was counting out his almonds and eating out of Tupperware containers that I could never eat like that. We made an agreement that that he would come and support me when I did the first tape at the night for Sarah Vista in 2013. If I helped him and supported him with his bodybuilding show. When it came time for his show in March of 2013, I thought it was going to be the dumbest thing that I've ever gone to. When I thought of bodybuilding, I just thought of watching a bunch of greased up guys having this ridiculous flexing contest on stage. And the idea of seeing women on stage wasn't something that had even crossed my mind before going to that competition. But when I went there, I saw the results of all of the hard work that I had seen Rick put into it for all those months. And in my mind, I never thought that I would be comfortable enough with myself to do anything like that. I had such low self esteem and I hated my body so much, especially after that assault. But I had a much better understanding after going to the show of what Rick was doing, and it motivated me to work a little bit harder in the gym. I still refuse to change anything about the way I ate. At that time, I'm extremely hard headed, and I was absolutely against doing anything with my diet at that time. I still, even though I was lifting regularly with Rick, I still had no respect for my body, and that was something that Rick tried really hard to change for me and would try to role model for me during that time that he was training me. But that year in 2013, I was in and out of the emergency room getting stitches after cutting myself. And over the course of a few years, I was sexually assaulted more times than I typically am willing to admit to people. The more I was assaulted, the more risky, irrational choices I would make that ended up making me the perfect prey for further exploitation and further abuse, which is something that I've recently found is a common reaction with rape victims, and why I wanted revictimization to be the topic for this year's Tape Bath the Night. I didn't care about what happened to my body. I didn't feel like it was really mine anymore because of everything that had happened. And then finally, on Valentine's Day of 2014, Rick was at the ER with me again while I got stitches in my arm for the third time. Typically, he would be really, really pissed off when I cut. He was really empathetic about it, but he would have that initial reaction of anger. But this time, he just started crying, and he told me, he said, "I can't do this anymore, Val. I can't keep worrying if I'm going to get that call one day that you're gone." And that day was the day that I decided that something needed to change. I didn't know how it was going to happen because I had tried stopping the cutting several times before unsuccessfully, but I knew that that had to be the last time that I did that. And it was. It's been 4 years, and I celebrate that on Valentine's Day every year. Then in March of 2014, I was at the Copper Classic again, sitting next to Rick and watching my current coach, Shane Early, compete. Rick had turned to me and said, if you're so hell bent on destroying your body, then why not use bodybuilding to do that? You can break your body down so that you can rebuild it to be stronger. Now, at that time, I was still about 200 pounds. Remember that I refused to do anything about my diet, so I was just training. And I'm sorry to disappoint all of you out there, but you're not going to out train a shitty diet. So that was a disappointment that I had to learn from after a year of trying that and it not working very well. So I was still 200 pounds at that time. But even being as heavy as I was inspired by the women on stage, especially the figure competitors. I saw the figure competitors as not just being beautiful, but being strong and confident and having a lot of things that I didn't have at the time. So I turned to Rick and said, oh, I want you to be completely honest with me. If I put in the work, do you think that I could be up there on stage at the 2016 Copper Classic? And Rick usually didn't bullshit me with with honesty. He was usually pretty honest with me when it came to having realistic goals. And so he turned to me and he said, "You know what? If you put the amount of energy that you put into destroying yourself and the cutting, and you put it into training, then absolutely you can do that." So I started tracking my food, and I've always thrived on knowledge and learning. So I threw myself full force into learning everything I could possibly learn about competing and nutrition and training, and just tried to absorb as much information as I could. During my 2 years of prep, a lot of really amazing things happened. I fell in love with weights because I felt in control of my body for the first time. Every success and every failure that I experienced in the gym, those were things that I had ownership of, no one else. Definitely not the people who had hurt me. So I felt more in control of my life. My mood had started to stabilize. I'd been on multiple different medications. Nothing worked well at all. My depression went down pretty significantly. I slowly started getting some confidence and started feeling a little bit better about my body. That's not to say that there weren't a lot of struggles along the way. It was a learning process for sure, and I definitely wasn't perfect during that journey. In fact, I remember getting my ass chewed out pretty good when I ate 4 Crunchwrap Supremes from Taco Bell and lied about how many I ate, and then got caught in that lie. So I went through a lot of the same struggles that most people go through when they're trying to lose weight. So it wasn't a perfect linear path getting there. There was no quick fix or any type of shortcut getting there with both my recovery from the cutting and the sexual assault and from the weight loss. There was no short path there. It came down to me just finding a big enough reason to finally do something different and taking that ownership back over my body. And that's the message that I really want to leave those trying to lose weight or trying to compete, is that it's not going to be a cakewalk doing it, but I don't regret a single day of that journey, and that it was absolutely worth every ounce of effort that I put into it. But I only got back the effort that I put into it. There was no shortcut there. I learned during that time to be mindful of my body. I learned even my off season and the time that I spent with Shane after the competition, that's definitely improved even more. Learning and becoming mindful of my own body and what went in it, and learning to respect what food can do for my body. I've learned that I was way stronger than I had realized, and that's something that I still learn every time I hit a new PR in the gym. I surprise myself every single time I hit a new PR. And I learned that I could share this journey with others so that they can know that they're strong too. That I could be a role model of how to take a healthy approach to making really major life changes that are already difficult to make. During the last year of prep, it was really hard to keep having faith that I could do it up until that point, doing it for myself fully and keeping my focus on that deadline of the Copper Classic in 2016 was enough to be able to maintain those healthy habits that I developed and um, be able to keep making progress. But in that last year, it started becoming difficult just having that. As I dropped weight, people took notice of it and would ask me about my journey, and I would ask me how I got there. And so I would share some of that with them. And by doing that, people started talking to each other about my story, and people would approach me saying that I had inspired them. And so having that ended up adding another level to my competing. When the 2015 Tape Bath and Night was successful and bodybuilding was an integrated part of that growth as a person for me and for my recovery from all the horrific things that had happened, I decided that I would build on that why for competing. And I always talk to my clients, even now, about knowing what your why is. And when things get really difficult, when you have a goal and things start getting really hard, you're always going to come back to that reason why. And if it's not a big enough reason why, then it's easy to back out of those goals. And so I had decided that I would compete in the 2016 Copper Classic in honor of other survivors of sexual assault, and that I would use that journey to be able to help others to know that they aren't alone and that they could have that ownership back over their bodies the way that I had found. Um, I did lose 120 pounds from the time that I started up until the day I competed. And I wore a teal suit for sexual assault and PTSD survivors. That's the message that I want to leave for survivors is that the people who have hurt you had their day. Your body and your voice don't belong to those people anymore. Whether you take a similar journey as I did into physical fitness and using that to feel empowered, or if you speak at an event like Tape at the Night, or make a YouTube video to have a voice again, whatever it is that you find, try to find something to take that power back because they've already had enough time out of your life. So there it is, my very long story of how I became a bodybuilder. There are a lot more detailed parts of that story that I'm sure will come up in future videos that I make, but that will be what I'll leave with you today. So I will talk to all of you later.